So now that we're live on Facebook. So okay, so you have a husband and wife. Let's go deeper. Tell us about the story of how that all came about. How did you go from being monogamous with your husband for the past for
30
years? For how long?
30
years. And
well, I wasn't monogamous that whole time, but I have been with him for 30 years.
Okay. Is that including your dating life with him? Like when you guys were dating?
15 years of that has been my polyamorous life with that. Dating him was only about 2 years, but I was only 15. I wasn't going to get married that young.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you've known him since you were in high school.
Yes.
All right. And okay, so you met when you were 15, or you started dating when you were 15. And how long were you monogamous? So from the time you were 15 until?
Let's see. So I got married at 17, and I stayed monogamous until my early 30s. And then I told my husband one night, he's always known I was bisexual. Mm-hmm. I just don't act on it. And we just were monogamous because we weren't really ready to open up, or it just didn't come up. But one day it did. I told him, I said, I got a crush on this girl who's in this group that I'm in. And I was acting like giddy and nervous and like everything you would notice in like your high schooler if they have a crush on somebody. Mm-hmm. And he was giggling about it. I guess he was really enjoying seeing my discomfiture at having a crush. But he told me, he said, well, why don't you ask her out? And honestly, that was sort of like the official turning point. And we explored options of me getting a chance to date a woman. And I still know her. We're still really good friends 15 years later. And I actually dated her husband for a little while with them as well. So I had a chance to be what they consider a unicorn. And that was sort of an accident. It was not intentional. But yeah, from that point on, it was like, we didn't want to go backwards.
I want to know more about being a unicorn. What's that like? First of all, for people who don't know what a unicorn is, can you explain the term, and also then share with us what that was like for you?
I'll explain it. Be aware there are many groups that have different definitions of the term unicorn, and not all of them are complementary. And it's considered to be not a good thing nowadays to be considered a unicorn hunter. Which is basically a woman or man, doesn't matter, who is the partner with a couple. Mm-hmm. And some groups will tell you that you're an equilateral triangle, but most people will tell you that you are sort of like the secondary relationship. You're not part of a primary relationship, but you're with a pair of people, 2 guys, 2 girls, guy and a girl, doesn't matter, but they have a primary relationship, and you are sort of like the third wheel in a way. Mm-hmm. Did that explain it right?
Yes.
Okay. What was the next question?
What was it like for you?
With this particular partnering, I fell in love with their love. I loved how, and this hasn't changed actually for me at all, and what I am attracted to. I was in love with how they loved each other. And that is why I love them.
That's really beautiful. I see people like that all the time. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you guys are such a great couple. And I just feel this like overwhelming love for them. Doesn't necessarily mean I want to sleep with them, but but sometimes like maybe possibly someday I would be interested. I haven't met anyone who I was like so into in that way, and also like adoring of their love. But that sounds really cool. Okay, so you fell in love with their love. And how long did it last?
Well, after I think it was like 4 or 5 years, they ended up having to move because they wanted to own a piece of property that was larger than a postage stamp. because we live in San Diego and it's really expensive to live out here. And so they moved to the East Coast and found a nice big 10-acre farm. So they could have horses and cows and things like that. And they were really happy. And once in a while I would fly out and I'd like bring one of my kids with me so they could go to summer camp for the summer. In fact, both of them got a chance to go out there and do that. And so that we just kind of continued a long distance relationship, which got constricting because every relationship, whether you're monogamous or polyamorous or open in whatever way, you have boundaries, you have rules. And one of our rules was that I couldn't like have even protected sex with anyone else. I could have a relationship, like an emotional relationship, and flirt and have all those wonderful things. But when it came to sex, I couldn't do that.
Wait,
so,
this is while you were married though?
Yeah.
So
what?
it was okay for you to sleep with your husband, but not with anyone.
Definitely. Yeah, because he was they wanted a closed circle.
Okay.
They didn't want.
That's what I've learned recently is called a polycule.
Yeah. I learned that was an East Coast term, but I loved it so much I adopted it too. I have a polycule. It's like a molecule. So we're all attached in different ways.
Yeah, exactly.
So the neat thing about that relationship was my husband was best friends with my girlfriend's husband. And they did everything together. They built things together. We'd go camping together. It was such a beautiful, tight-knit family. Just some of us were having sex and some of us weren't, you know?
Yeah, that totally, like, it totally makes sense to me. Not, you know, it's not everybody's cup of tea, or even maybe they're just not ready to ingest it, but I totally get it. I totally feel that.
Yeah, and I would never push polyamory on anyone. That has to be a total, like, commitment to personal development and being able to open up the lizard brain, because our lizard brain says scarcity, scarcity, scarcity. It says, oh, the emotions are mine, you can't share those. Yeah. Your physicalness is mine, you can't share that. Your wealth
I just read a bit of Laurie Andrews' book, I think it's called The 10 Laws of Tantric Intimacy. Actually, I have it right here. Yeah, the Tantric Laws of Intimacy by Laurie Handler. Sorry, I don't know why I said Andrews.
Yeah, I love her.
Yeah, she's great. So she and Michael are one of the couples that when I watch them, I'm like, oh my God, I love them, you know, because they're just so funny together. They're so great. And she talks about the lizard brain and how you're able to witness it and work with it in Tantra. And I feel like the lizard brain might actually be connected to why we have rules in relationships in the first place. Right?
Mm-hmm. Well, the rules are to protect like, what do you need in order to feel safe? And those are the rules that allow you to feel safe. So when somebody says, how do I open up my marriage? We say, well, here's how you need to create boundaries. Well, how do I create boundaries? Well, ask yourself this question. What do you need in order to feel safe in this relationship? And those can be physical things. They can be emotional things. They can be mental things. They can be what's that one, like monetary. Like if you decide we're going to agree that I'm going to have kids and I'm going to stay home and I'm going to raise the kids, and your side of the agreement is that you're going to provide for us so that I can always be there for the kids and not have to go to work except maybe do some work from home or online type of stuff. But those are agreements that will allow me to feel safe, you know? And maybe we agree that you're not going to leave me for another woman. That needs to kind of be an agreement too, if you're choosing to live a monogamous lifestyle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but so many people break that agreement. Like divorce is, like, I think probably skyrocketing even today. Well, maybe not today. Maybe, I don't know about quarantine. It's probably really showing people like whether or not they're truly in love and able to work through
how
things.
Strong your skill sets are as a communicator. And
I guess that's probably really, it's about skill sets around communicating and how strong you are in general and how resilient you are and willing to do the work.
Yeah.
So anyways, we were talking about you met your husband at 15. You guys were monogamous up until your early 30s, and then you got yourself into dating other people, which included his encouragement of approaching this woman, and then it turned into a unicorn situation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But now, and I don't know what the time like it was between then and now. You have a wife, so that to me seems like it would be totally different from being the unicorn in a. But also it's like a reverse unicorn. How does that work? A reverse
yeah,
unicorn.
no, I get it. That's so funny. Yeah. So yeah, and so instead of me, well, she's joined us, but she's totally lesbian. So like, she quoted, and I quote, she says that my husband is the husband she never knew she needed. Or something like that. But because they're really good friends, and I'm such a geek that I will follow them down the aisles of Home Depot when they're picking out heavy lumber for one of my crazy projects, and they're lifting it together, and I gotta grab my camera and go, oh God, I'm gonna put this on Instagram. My husband and my wife are like working together to do cool things for me.
What's your Instagram handle? I want to follow you.
I believe it's Heather Megalsson Arts. Heather
Megalsson Art. Okay,
yeah,
great.
Yeah.
So. I know you said earlier that your life would not make for great reality TV, but I'm convinced that at least your Instagram must be interesting.
No, I didn't put that on Instagram, but I probably did put it. It's in my camera. I could totally make an Instagram specifically for my poly life, you know?
That would be interesting. That would be super interesting. I would follow you. Yeah, I would follow you.
Maybe I'll think about that one. So yeah, one of the reasons we decided we created sort of an intention for opening up our marriage, because it's funny. We wanted to have like 2 or 4 children, because when I first decided I want to marry my husband, I think we were in like the library parking lot after my school, because I was still in high school and he was like 23, 24. And I looked at him and I go, you know what? I could see us having grandkids together. Skip the kid part. The kid part wasn't important. It was this concept of like long-term relationship. And that I could see us having a ton of grandkids together. I mean, I had like 13 cousins, so I was all primed to have lots of little cousins running around having fun at my house during Thanksgiving, which is like my favorite. We just our family day. We don't even call it Thanksgiving anymore. It's just family day.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And I wanted 4 kids. And the problem was I had sciatica. And my first child really made it worse. I was like in a wheelchair for the last month of my pregnancy. And the second child realigned my spine and my pelvic area and like fixed me. And so when she was born and the sciatica went away, I'm like, Damia Daylin, done. And I went and got tied.
That's amazing.
Got tied. I'm like,
so your sciatica was healed by childbirth?
One kicked my ass and the other fixed me. I love it.
I wonder what your relationships will be with them as life goes on, you know, how that manifests in the
I love them.
I
told them today they could live with me forever if they want. I said, you guys have to at least go away and live on your own for 1 year supporting yourself, and then you can come back. Because I want them to have that. I never had that.
Yeah.
I never actually got to support myself fully. So I'm like, I'm working on it. I'm gonna get an artist residency somewhere across the world for at least 6 months, and have to support myself for at least 6 months, and then I'll come home.
Is that the plan in the near future?
I don't know if it's near. I'm working on it. When we start talking about business and art and stuff like that, I'll share more about that.
Okay.
But it is something that I want to do, because I've never gotten to experience fully what it's like to be a professional, like full-time artist, living the dream, having like this big vision and selling people into the vision and stuff. Looks like somebody's, you wrote a note about talk about foreign art.
Just a little note there. Yeah,
not a problem. So that was our intention. It was like, okay, we're going to start a family. We're going to be in a long-term relationship. We're going to have lots of grandkids. And then we had 2 children, which meant they might both, if they both end up being at least loving guys or wanting children, it doesn't matter. Then we might have 2 grandkids. And I'm like, So when we opened ourselves up to this poly lifestyle, it was like, we could like have more kids. We could like have more grandchildren. And I really wanted to marry my first girlfriend. I loved her so much, but she wasn't quite on the same boat that I was on. She was like, had way other plans, loved me, but wanted to be friends.
I have 2 questions for you. First of all, are you actually married to both your husband and your wife? And like, what does that look like?
Awesome. So yeah, we'll jump into that. I was going to fast forward. Do you want I was going to give you the Reader's Digest version because I've only had 2 serious relationships with women since then. And they both had the same intention, was to expand the family and have lots of grandchildren.
Oh.
And so Katie Ann Holton is my current wife, and I've been with her for 5 years, and she's the one that said yes. Second one was narcissistic. We're not going to go there. But I learned lots of things. But she said yes. And your question was, how do you marry 2 people? Right. And I'm guessing you're probably wondering, wait, is that legal? So number 1, the law was not invited. The intention was that I would have 2 life partners that felt the full idea of being in wedded bliss forever and ever, all met. A commitment. So we're calling that commitment marriage, because it is an intention. And the intention is that we're together, we're primary partners. And since primary partner sounds like it's 2 people, we decided to kind of diagram it out and make it a primary circle. So we have a primary circle, and we are each other's priorities, until actually somebody changed my definition and made me my primary partner. So technically now in my mind, we're secondary partners. Because I have a primary relationship with myself. It's true. Something I'm learning.
Where do your children fall into that? Are they like an extension of yourself and they're also primaries, or are they part of the secondary circle?
No, because it's not a partnership. I have a commitment to their well-being and care, just like I would have a commitment to making sure if I work for a job, I would have a commitment to them. They're adults now. So the commitment is a little bit less. They are still look to me as a role model and a guide. And I'm happy to allow them to do so. It's a choice though. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of parents, when their kids are 18, it's like, get out, go make your way in the world. I don't have that relationship with my kids. They're welcome to stay while they're going through school and learning how to become really independent human beings, which is something I want for them like crazy. And not because they drive me nuts. They don't. We sing together. We freaking formed a quartet during quarantine, and we called ourselves House Arrest. That's the name of our group.
Oh my gosh, what a great name. I love it.
Now my daughter, one of my daughters, my older daughter, has experience with singing. We've actually competed together in an international singing competition in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand in front of 10,000 people. So she's good. She knows how to do it. My little one has never even been in a choir. She just listened to us for her entire life, but she picked up tenor like crazy. We taught it to her. She just memorizes from hearing, and she learned it, and she's an angel. Oh my gosh. And my husband, who secretly wanted to be Mrs. Doubtfire for Halloween and finally ended up being Mrs. Doubtfire for one Halloween, says, I can sing the woman's bass part. So because that's my normal role, I sing the bass in a 4-part women's a cappella barbershop group for 20 years, which I retired from a couple years ago. I taught him the bass, and I went back to baritone, which I'd sang for 10 years. So then I have one daughter singing lead, one singing tenor. I'm singing baritone. My husband is doing his darndest to sing bass. And dang it, he sounds really good.
Well, you trained him well. You taught him well.
Thank you.
I know who to go to if I need voice lessons. I've actually been thinking about that lately.
But I know tons of people, and there's a great one I would recommend online, who's the director of several choruses here in San Diego, Kathleen Hansen, YouTube channel. Look her up. Can't go wrong.
Okay. Will do. Thank you.
Plug.
So you were talking earlier about commitment. Two things, but I kind of want to backtrack a little bit because a question came up, and I have been in a lot of talks lately about Tantra and the queer community and how it all works, because it in the traditional talks about Tantra, a lot of teachers will use the terms masculine and feminine, and a lot of people have maybe triggers is the best word that we can use, and they seem to be relatively light triggers. They're not heavy triggers. They're not comfortable with this terminology, so we work around it, right? We talk about the sun and the moon, or the earth and the sky, the passive and receptive, the passive and assertive, et cetera, or receptive and assertive. And I was reading something yesterday about how a person chooses to engage with either their feminine or masculine. Someone posed this question in a Facebook group, and I thought about that, and I was like, oh, for me, it's a very quick combination of intuition and logic, like the marriage of the two, helping me navigate those waters, right? So my present moment is, how I choose to interact and engage and move through my present moment. If I lean more on my masculine or my feminine or my receptive or assertive qualities, based on how I perceive the moment, what I'm being called to do or asked for in that situation, and what feels right within me as well. How, having a husband and having a wife, how do you see these things sort of playing out with different genders, right? Different embodiments of gender, and also within yourself, and what sort of insights can you share?
Absolutely. So Tantra literally means method of expansion, like self-expansion. And inside, well, I've been kind of taking the male-female idea, because when we say feminine, we think woman. When we say masculine, we think man. I like how you structured yours. You said like receptive versus, what was the other word?
Assertive.
Yeah. And for me, it's flow and structure in the positive sense. So and when I look at flow and structure as the positive side of things, the opposite being confusion and chaos, which would be the negative sides, and then think of a continuum between the two. So answering your question around being married to man and a woman, number one, we all have both, right? We all have times of flow and structure, or in this case, what I see inside of me is I create structure so that I can flow inside of it, and it gives me boundaries. Have you ever heard the phrase, give me boundaries so that I may be free?
I think so, yeah. And it resonates with me. That resonates with me a lot. It's something that I haven't had too much of in life, is structure, and I've had to create it,
Well, think about kids in a playground. There was a study once, and I haven't pinpointed the study, and we talk about this study all the time, but nobody's ever found out what year it was and who produced it. So someday that'll happen. But we know that studies exist that where a bunch of children were invited to play in a playground, and the playground was in the middle of a field, but the field had like no fence. It just was vast, and then there was a playground there. The kids all hovered around the equipment, and they didn't travel far away from the equipment. But then a group came in and put a fence around it, and the kids would play all the way to the edges of the fence. So this idea, they had more freedom because they were given really, really clear boundaries. So they knew that if they went far away, they knew where they were allowed to stop. And that reminds me of, my mom used to ignore me when I crossed over the line, only she never told me where the line was. And in her way, she was actually creating freedom for me in her mind, that she didn't want to give me some boundaries, yet she wouldn't tell me what I did wrong when I went over the invisible boundary. So that neither here nor there, that's another weird thing. But this sense of flow.
No, but I love it. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
the sense of flow and structure, once I identified, I had to become aware of it first. I had to become aware, what is my feminine? Like if I could sum my feminine in one word, what would that word be? It was going to be flow. And inside of flow, the umbrella term of flow was like creativity, nourishing, intuition, receptivity, things like that, that has a flow. There's no block. There's nothing that stops it or constrains it or makes it go a certain way. Yet there's still this nourishing, like this container that holds a safe space for all to exist, all the creativity, all the receptivity, all of the stuff that I would consider the feminine or the flow. And then there's the side, and by the way, I'm a cusp. So I'm a Leo and a Virgo. I was born in a leap year, which made me born as a Leo. And I'm not real big on astrology, but looking back at years that weren't leap years, I was totally in my Virgo sign. And my Virgo sign loves lists and structure and like all of this. And my Leo loves spotlight, spontaneity, flow, and craziness. And so it's really intriguing to notice inside of myself when I'm like way more structured and needing details versus big picture vision. I want this to happen. It's beautiful. It's creative.
Do you find that one aspect of your personality comes out more often with your wife or with your husband, or do you find you kind of tether back and forth?
Situational. Be present.
Yeah.
Whatever's present. I fit. I will flow into whatever's needed.
Okay.
And sometimes it calls for structure. And that's something I'm still working on becoming more aware of. I notice I have a thing that when I'm feeling unsettled or unbalanced, I will make sure my desk space is in like 90-degree and 45-degree angles, and everything is evenly spaced. It sounds weird. I won't notice sometimes when I'm unsettled until I look down and notice that I've structured everything in front of me, and I'll go, what's going on in the environment around me that's causing me to need more structure? So I
do that a lot too, but in an opposite way. So I will,
really?
Yes, if I'm feeling like I'm tuning into emotions a lot and I'm doing a lot of emotional or etheric work, like work in the unseen dimensions of life, I will often I'll become very forgetful, or I won't complete a task thinking I completed it, but I won't really be as detail oriented about it because I feel like I'm pulled away in some other way. And every time this happens, I check in with myself. I'm like, what's going on? Like in the unseen, what do I need to sit with? And yeah, it's fascinating how those things they literally mirror in our lives. Like we mirror, our lives are our mirrors for what's happening with us. And yeah,
Opposite's true.
Really
Opposite is true too. And since the quarantine, everything's been forced online. And now there's all these little structures, and you've been invited to everything, only it's more structured than it was before. And I find myself rebelling and running the other direction and getting back into freedom and flow. I don't want my time dictated to me, you know? So there's both. I will fit into whatever the situation is. And that's how my flow and structure work. And it's the same thing with my marriage too, you know, and I find that happening a lot more with my wife. My husband's, he has a really good balance of masculine and feminine, so that when he gets home and he gave at the office, he was at work all day, he needs to be in flow. He doesn't want to, although he'll cook. You know, I'm home all day, but yeah, he'll come home and cook most of the time. Yay me.
Well, cooking can be a really creative opportunity also, depending on how you approach it.
And it also gives him time to sit there and be on his phone and surf. So surfing the net is a way of not being structured. You get to go down one rabbit hole and then switch gears and go into another one. And so it's like he's creating a framework. His structure is, I'm cooking right now. There's an amount of time that's happening. There's a space that I need to be in when it happens. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to get on my phone and follow whatever my intuition wants. So he's in his balance at that point. And with me, that's where I fight some shadow. My shadow is caretaker when I don't need to have it. But I think sometimes I'll feel guilty that I was doing flow all day. I still get things done, but I could have gotten so much more done if I'd created a to-do list of this and this and this. So
I love to-do lists.
I do. I love that. That's my Virgo. That's my Virgo side.
But the only way I can accomplish anything in my life is if I have like, checklists of things to do. I'm like, okay.
But it's a great container, especially if you create the rule that here's the list of possibilities. Now, how many of these can I pick and get done today? But the idea is that you make it bigger than what you can get done in the allotted time, but then you can pick and choose what you want to do and not make yourself do all of them.
Yeah. What I do with my checklist is, they'll get extra long because I like to achieve as much as possible in one day. I'm like, okay, let's get it all done. And my moods fluctuate, just like any other human being. My productivity capacity, I guess you can call it, fluctuates as well. And some days I need to be more in my flow and sort of like more creative or more social. And other days I'm like, okay, let's get all the admin stuff done or the, technical stuff done. And at the end of the day, if I only get half that list done, I'm okay. And I take it as at the end of the day, I always reflect, okay, how are you prioritizing your time? What does that tell you about yourself? Where is your real passion? What really matters to you? And then what should roll over to the next day? So for me, it's like a self-management tool. Checklists are the best.
They are. Yeah. Otherwise I'll forget I'll forget what I actually did, not just what I haven't done.
Right. And do you also feel more accomplished when you check things off your list?
And are you guilty of ooh, I didn't write this on the list, but I got it done, so I should write it on the list just so I can have the joy of checking it off.
You know what I'm even more guilty of doing lately is I'll be sitting in a meditation, I'll be doing a guided meditation. All of a sudden something comes into my mind and I'm like, oh, I need to write it on my list. I don't want to forget, but I'm in a meditation. Oh my gosh, what do I do? And I'm like, you're in a meditation. This is your meditation time. I have to come and discipline myself. Yeah.
Funny.
The contrast and the conflict of being an ambitious and productive person and wanting to be in that meditative flow state as well is fascinating.
So my guilt shadow will jump in when my husband gets home because I want to go take care of him because I've been taking care of me all day. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just have to keep it in check and be really aware. Am I feeling guilty? Or, just checking in with my feelings. It's my motivation. It's why am I doing this? Well, because he's been working hard all day and I want to take care of him and love on him because he gives so much to me.
Yeah.
Now with my wife, it just depends on going on with her. She sometimes will push her masculine away. So she tends to get ultra feminine, both in the negative and positive aspects of that. And so I don't believe there always has to be a dynamic opposite. I honestly don't. I think that I can still set a container and flow inside of that while she's flowing, because I can still hold that space for her to be in her feminine if she wants to be. And I can experience my feminine too. She's totally only loves women. And she's very much all about the feminine and exploring every aspect of that feminine. And so who am I to say, yeah, you need to have some masculine? I don't need to do that.
I want to ask you a bit of a sexy question. And of course, feel free to answer it to the extent that you're comfortable. In Tantra, we also talk a lot about polarity, right? And cultivating polarity as a way of maintaining attraction. So when you and your wife are both in your feminine, do you find that to be juicy sexually? Do you find it to be more we're being friends right now, and the lover component comes a bit later after one of you have exhausted or shifted, or how does that look? And you said sure. I just heard you say sure. It can get juicy. And what does that look like?
Again, we go back to structure and flow. Sometimes you can take all the structure out of it. No, let's see, you can actually set structure and not have to be in charge of it. Take music, for example.
Okay.
If you set the intention that you want to be with whoever it is, man, woman, doesn't matter. And you set music that is basically holding the space for you. It sets the mood, whether it's 80s hair rock punk band, and then you just go in and you're present and you stay in flow, and wherever the music takes you, the music is now holding that polarity. Therefore, there's still something there that's helping with the polarity, but it doesn't have to be you. So one of the things when I was hearing about polarity, this polarity, that, which is, it does work. When you create polarity, it totally serves its function. But I call bullshit, excuse my language on the public.
Okay.
But
we're all adults here.
I call BS on that because I don't believe that you each have to take a role in that polarity. So if you're both wanting to just nourish yourselves in the divine feminine and sensuality of the moment, then you're constantly in that yin yang ebb and flow of flow and structure, in that, like, she wants to do something, gets an idea and wants to be in charge one moment. And in charge is a very, let's say, masculine word. But let's just say that you're just sort of not designating. You're not creating structure, your turn, my turn. Or maybe you are. Maybe
just when it comes
your
up.
job to relax and let the other person be in their feminine as they're exploring. Yet you're still in the feminine, being receptive. So you can both play different roles inside the feminine. You can even play different roles inside the masculine. Like, there's something called primal play, in case people listening to don't know what this means, where you're just being very animalistic and you're maybe rough and tumble, but you're both in charge. And there's this dynamic inside of this structure. And actually, that's more feminine if you think about it. You can't take aggression as always masculine, right? Because you're both being aggressive, but in a flow. So there you got both. And you're still like, let's say you can oscillate between flow and structure rapidly.
Right.
You
Now,
know?
being able to do all of this, really requires, in my experience, a strong attunement to the energy behind everything and within, right? So you have to be really tuned into your partner's energy.
Some people do it naturally, and some people take years to open up to that and realize that they haven't been doing it, and then practicing, really training on how to do it. But some people were never told that they were doing it wrong or right. They just simply did it. So
this is interesting, the concept of some people being more naturally in tune with energy and some needing to train. And we all have different strengths, right? We all have different sort of innate qualities. You mentioned something about tuning into your feminine when we were speaking last week or the week before. And I have this question about tuning into the feminine. It seems to me that you had like a specific, maybe a method or 2 or 5, I don't know, for tuning into your feminine. I'm curious to know how you do that. Like, if a man or woman, or hermaphrodite even, someone or someone who does not identify with any gender whatsoever, an agendered person, wanted to tune in with their feminine or receptive qualities. We'll say receptive just so that, it's highly inclusive. How can you give them, like, can you give a person like 3 tips on how to do something like that?
Yes, absolutely. Just right in presently off the top of my head, I did not pre-make this up or anything. So just that's the disclaimer, is number 1, define it. What does it mean to you? What is being feminine? Like, when you look out there and you see somebody that you say exemplifies feminine, what about them? Define that. Is that what you want? Maybe that, because you have to know what you want. So even if this was a whole different conversation, you need to define what you want to know if you're in it or not, right?
That's really powerful. Yeah. And there are so many examples of what it means to be feminine, just like there are to be masculine. Yeah.
Number 2, look for evidence. Look for evidence where you've had it. When has it happened for you? What were the things that allowed you? And allow is really the key word here. What were the things that allowed you to easily step into that? Find that, then you'll understand how to recreate it. Allow is the 3rd one. So the look for evidence that you've had it. So you need to examine around what happened in order for you to be able to go there. And then the 3rd is allow yourself to go there. Just allow it.
Wonderful.
That's all. It can be
That's
as
so universal.
I'm going to allow myself to be receptive right now. I'm going to allow myself to be in flow right now. I'm going to allow myself to be intuitive right now. Whatever the definition is, I'm going to allow myself to have my defined femininity right now.
Have you ever, and do you ever experience blocks to your intuition?
Not that I can think of, but if I really
Okay.
thought on it, I'm sure I could make something up.
No need.
No.
Just curious. You come off to me to be very much in touch with your feminine side, with your inner
Oh,
feminine or your receptive side.
thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't used to. Oh, I didn't used to. I had to have a checklist. I had to have a control for everything. I had to have a definition for everything. The switch came when I learned, actually through Tantra. I think through Tantra made me aware of it the most. I learned it before Tantra, but I didn't have a way to put it into words. I didn't have an awareness, a heightened awareness that this is what I was doing. And that was how to be present to just this moment and not think ahead and not define everything that just happened, but to be absolutely present. And now I feel, and somebody else may have a different definition of this and they're welcome to it, but I feel that is the most positive feminine that you can possibly be, is to be in flow of this moment with no definition of what just happened and no thoughts ahead about what needs to happen next. I'm always pulling goofy faces. I'm noticing this about myself. And like, I make these little visual apologies and I'm like, I wonder where that comes from. Isn't it interesting? I love finding stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think I have a hard time being a center of attention. That's it. But I don't.
But you're a Leo cusp. You should have,
right?
I think you're just in denial. You're just in denial of it. Am I hearing some shame about wanting attention or liking attention?
Yeah. So there's a really good psychological shadow for me that has recently become bigger, like in my field of awareness, is that I have a thing about taking up space. I have a thing about taking up space when I think I'm not adding value. When I feel like I'm adding value, I don't have a problem with it. So I have to look for, okay, did I feel like I wasn't adding value just then? And it's funny because when I become aware of it, I start talking myself into I was adding value.
This is like I feel like this is a common sort of cycle.
Totally.
Like I've even caught myself in things like this where I'm like, does it feel in alignment with with who I am and what I want to deliver, what I want to share with the world truly? And it is like a check-in with my self-worth and like where I'm coming from, like where am I transmitting from? Yeah, that's really interesting.
That's a good way to put it. That's a great way to put it. Am I being in alignment right now with whatever I want that to be? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the masculine coming in and checking in on the structure. Like, hey, are you like are you flowing a little too much? Do you need to kind of bring that balance back in?
Yeah. Squirrel.
I mean, I definitely have my squirrel moments and I love them. There's time and space for everything.
That compassion, that self-compassion for being too much of one way or the other is just so, I think that's a balancing point. You have to have compassion in both the feminine and the masculine. It might look different. I don't know.
Well, there's a reason that we're made this way also, right? Like, aren't we like, we're all just pieces of a puzzle and somehow we're complementary to each other? That's kind of how I see it. When it comes down to your personality and your more humanness, right? Like the sort of outer, the interface that people encounter on a day-to-day basis versus who we think we are spiritually and who we think we are with the outside world. I feel like there's always some play and like we just find our spot and our.
Yep. It's all about protecting ourselves. So yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of protecting yourself, you have something called a commitment filter.
Yeah.
And to me, that is a lot of people struggle with determining how much to commit to different people in their lives and how to gauge that. And I've described it my way before, but I would love to hear you talk about your commitment filter, what that looks like for you, both in theory and in practice.
Right. It stems from when at a young age, we're taught, go hug Aunt Betty, be nice, share your toys. So it causes us to grow up becoming more on the people-pleasing side. And because we got to make sure everybody around us feels safe and comfortable. And somehow we were given that responsibility, either by our parents or the teachers at school or whatever it was. And some people were able to shuck that off. They naturally rebelled and they never had that stick. But a lot of people, especially people that became mothers, I'm one of those.
Say that again, people that became what?
Moms.
Oh, right. Mothers.
And
Yeah,
it's hard not to pass that on to our children too. But I didn't want to make people mad at me. I didn't want to disappoint anyone, because in the lizard brain, as we talked about earlier, the tribal mind is, if you're causing like discordance, if you're rocking the boat, you're putting your status in jeopardy. You could then become ostracized, or nobody will offer you that choice position that you wanted to be seen as a leader in. And and you know, just so many bad things could happen if you weren't a nice person. The problem is when you're saying yes to everyone else, you might be saying no to a lot of things that would truly make you happy and stay in alignment with who you are as a spiritual being, or the way you want to project yourself into the world, or your great big vision or goal that you have. So I learned through something called Cuddle Party, which is sort of a very lateral playing field where a group of people to get together and explore, asking for what they want inside a very structured boundary system, which in many different conscious communication groups we call social agreements. And those are very easy. If you're a yes, say yes. If you're a no, say no. If you're a maybe, say no. And there's a big, huge thing around that. And you have the right to change your mind. Those are like the 4 biggest freaking rules of this whole thing. And so I got very interested in like, oh, so how does this play out in the big world? How does this play out in business? And for a while I owned a massage business, and I went to a lot of networking group meetings. And inside of that, you would get people requesting your time to come meet them for coffee or whatever. And I recognized that I was still in the people pleasing mode, and I wanted to say yes, until I realized I was wasting a lot of time meeting people who really only wanted something from me, and that we weren't ever really going to trade services or share each other. And so I'm like, I'm doing that thing. Well, these rules actually helped me in that world so that I could easily say no to people because it wasn't personal. No, I'm not interested in that. And
can I ask you a question? I want to go deeper on the people pleasing
thing.
What do you feel is the root cause of a person being a people pleaser?
They haven't recognized where their yes lies. They haven't recognized that they're always a yes to something. And becoming aware where your yes is makes the no so much more obvious. You have to know what you want.
Can you give us an example?
Is the key.
Can you give us an example?
And this is part of the filter too. The thing I want most in this world is to live my mission. And my mission is to create and support safe spaces for people to self-explore and evolve. And I use that as a measuring stick for everything. That is what I want. Now, if somebody asks me something and it's a yes or no, like they want a favor from me, and I look at that through the filter of what I want, I can look at it, is it serving that? If the answer is no, I might still be a yes. So I have to look at other things. Is it detracting from it or sucking energy or resources away from what I want? And that's the big key thing. Once people know what they want, they'll understand if whatever is being requested of them, if it's not going to take any away from it, they might have another reason to do it. But if it's actually going to suck resources like time, money, space away from their main mission or the things that they want, then they can easily be a no. Easily. Hands down. Not a problem. Well, of course, they might still have that little people pleaser in them that says, well, I know what I want and I have to say no to this. Then that other piece of the puzzle of it's not personal. They're going to go find what they need from someone else. You don't have to save the world. That thing about it has to be us or it's no one. That's ego.
I think we all want to save the world deep down, right?
Yeah, I guess. Otherwise, why would we need to say yes? They can find somebody else to do it.
That is real. So it's funny because I've experienced within myself a sense of guilt for not providing something to somebody that my heart says, oh, just be altruistic and give. This comes from, I was raised to be a very charitable, selfless Catholic woman, more or less, even though I left the church at a fairly young age. And I think sometimes I see the past patterns of allowing guilt to come into play. And then my medicine for that, my antidote to the guilt, is remembering there's an abundance of people in the world. If I'm not giving this person what they need, somebody will. If it's in alignment, with the higher truth, of course. Yeah. And that's
you're lucky. You're lucky to have realized that, because some people never get past it has to be me. I'm the only one that can do this.
Yeah. Well, that takes away from, I've had experience, like I've had plenty of situations in my life where things weren't just handed to me or given to me easily, and I find that builds faith, A, in what's happening behind the scenes, and B, builds character. So both of those things are really important in life, especially if you want wisdom in a culture, right? Things shouldn't be easy and convenient if you want to learn, about things like hard work, or about things like faith, or about the ways that the universe has your back. You have to know that sometimes doors are going to close because they're not meant for you. That's sort of a mirror reflection for me. So on one side, I'll feel guilt. I might have felt guilty in the past, and now I'm more like, nope, if it's not me, it's somebody. And I know when I feel a strong yes to do something, and when I feel like it's a maybe, so it's a no, And I resign feelings of guilt. Like, I'm free. I'm just saying, you are no longer welcome here. We have to take care of ourselves as well. And that's personal responsibility. And that's a huge part of what Tantra teaches you, actually, is personal responsibility.
Right.
And I feel like that's really missing in our culture.
What is that?
Responsibility, personal responsibility. So many people right now, like, for instance, are angry with politicians for not executing things in a way that they think it should be done. And I'm thinking, first of all, we all have to also make sure that we are, that we're being responsible for our lives, that we're we can't treat our president like he's our daddy or something like this, right? If we're adults, we should also be sort of thinking and behaving and responding to situations like adults. And also, a person can only do what they can within the framework that they have developed themselves. So having certain expectations, anyway, I can go into a long tangent about this, but having expectations from people when they clearly haven't shown the capacity to even think along those lines is sort of disillusionment. I think I'm like, oh, what do you expect? Can't trust, this person to do this thing. So why should you hope that all of a sudden it will change? Anyway, commitment filters are important, right? Because then you know when to give and how much and to whom.
I only gave you the third filter. The other two are more important.
Okay, tell me more.
We talked earlier about primary relationships, and I mentioned that your primary relationship is with yourself. And that's the first filter. So if it's not good for you, or it's going to deplete you, it's an instant no. It doesn't even move on to the second filter. It's like done, right?
Okay, yeah.
Second filter is your commitment to other. And what I mean is like legal commitments. Like, you don't want to lose your job. If you say yes to this, it means you have to take time off of work, or if you have to do something against company policy or whatever. If the job's important to you, now that's the disclosure, the disclaimer. If the job's important to you, you say no, because it doesn't get through that filter. Job's just one of the other filters. Children, if you have dependents. So if it's going to take away from them or deplete something like your commitment to them, then you want to say no. And those are kind of no-brainers. And then that third is your higher purpose or your greater pursuits. That's the third one. But it has to get through the first two. Okay, it's not taking away from my self-care. That's bottom line. You know, you'd want it to add to your self-care. So something that's actually like gives you energy towards your self-care, that's a yes. And maybe it builds that relationship you have with your job or your kids or your spouse. That's a yes. And then if it totally feeds into your higher purpose or your higher pursuits, that's a total yes. That would be what we would consider a hell yes. All right. Now a regular yes might slip by the first two because it doesn't detract from it, but feeds the third. Or it might feed the first, but not detract from the other two. Or it might feed the second and not detract from the other two. So those are regular yeses. But you know what? Something that depletes any one of those three things, you should seriously consider saying, hey, do you have a different way that you can get what you need without asking me?
Yeah.
Which is a great question.
Totally. Absolutely. That's a wonderful question. Checking in with someone to make sure, that there isn't a more optimal way of them getting their needs being met. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about optimization, I guess. That's what it sounds like to me right now. And you know, speaking of optimization, pure embodiment, like really direct embodiment, is one of my best sources for knowing what my yeses and nos are. And I'm guessing that it would be the same for you. Like you can feel things in your body also, right?
Sometimes my body will know before my brain will.
Right.
Like that whole organizing thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like we don't always know why we're doing something here first, but it just makes sense somewhere else. So we do it. And like trusting the body before the mind is also a big challenge for people who are not in their bodies, who are consistently up here, and they're trying to constantly make decisions from up here as well. Maybe their job has them, you know, very cerebrally active or intellectually active throughout the day, and therefore they're just not really in tune with this corporeal experience. And you mentioned that you learned to trust your body before your mind at some point in your life. And I would like to know a little bit about how you did that and what role your mind plays now.
Awesome. Thanks.
In complement to your body. Yeah.
In 2007, I enrolled as a holistic health practitioner at a holistic college, and to become a licensed massage therapist and Reiki master teacher, stuff like that. And at that point, I started to learn about how smart the body was, and even to the point where it'll hold memories your mind doesn't remember. Just case in point, I took a deep massage class, like deep tissue, and I couldn't touch on my thighs. And I was kind of freaking out because I learned that like your body could, like your muscles could hold memories that you don't consciously hold. And I was afraid, like, oh, was I like sexually abused or something? And I was so dreading taking this class because like even a regular massage class, the teacher would come and use me as a demo, like when we were asking clients, like, is this pressure good? Is this pressure good? And he was like hovering his hand 6 inches above my thigh. And that was where I was comfortable. 6 inches of freaking above. And that's where it freaked me out. And then when I went to go take deep tissue class, I worked in partners with another student. I totally, fully trusted. And I said, I need you to check in with me constantly. And I need you to go super, super, super slow. So we did that. He got into the top of my thigh, not the hamstring and the back, but the top. And all the memories flooded back. And it wasn't as dramatic as I expected. I was a gymnast when I was freaking from 5 years old till teenager years. And I pulled those muscles so many times. It wasn't even funny, to the point where that was why I didn't want any touch there. It was so locked together from all the injury and then, what's it called? Healing, injury healing. That I had so much scar tissue built up in there that memory was stuck in there as well. And when he finally released all of that, I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. It was nothing like super, super dire, but the body is smart. It holds all the memories somewhere. I mean, when you feel tension, you feel it like up in your neck. A lot of people hold tension here, and it'll be all their stories are living there. Or they'll hold it in their third chakra and all their stories, and they'll have gut issues, massive gut, because your body is so smart. So that's where I learned about all of it and discovered it all like firsthand through all the body manipulation. And so over the last 13 years, it's been my job to get people into their bodies and feeling every part of their bodies and exploring what's there. Does it have a message for you? Is there a story about that part? Can you love that part and tell you love it? So there's this whole reconciliation process as adults we really should be going through to really feel comfortable in our bodies, like a lot.
Yeah. And I feel like when people don't love those feelings or don't witness those feelings, don't embrace and accept those feelings, what they're doing is actually creating more resistance to the problem. And that never actually solves the problem. If it's in you, it needs to be worked through, right? They say that the only way out is through. And
yes,
and a lot of embodiment coaches or massage therapists or yoga teachers or tantrics, we know that we have to go through it in order to liberate ourselves with it. We know it here. And so it's almost as if through meditation and through sharing and learning that our mind switches and begins to open up. Also, our psyche opens up to the healing experience and the necessity of this in our lives. But why? Like, what does it take for people to switch from resistance mode to I get it mode? I need to go for it now. What's the issue?
Safety, always safety. They have to have that feeling of safety that they're not going to be surprised by something awful that they can't deal with. Body is in league with shadow.
So people are scared to face these things because they're scared of the unknown. Yeah.
Possibly subconsciously. If there's something huge there, it's probably a subconscious level that makes them not even want to go take that first personal development class.
Right.
Poo-poo to personal development. That's for losers, yada, yada.
Right.
Yeah. What are you afraid of?
Yeah.
What are you afraid of?
Yeah.
So yeah, when people feel safe, they're willing to explore. And unfortunately, sometimes you can open a can of worms. A lot of times, massage therapists and other people, other Tantra teachers, yoga teachers, we're taught to not practice outside of our scope of practice because we can open up memories that we can't put back, and then people need a therapist. So we have to be extra super special careful when we start seeing signs that somebody's going into freeze or flight, that we make sure they have the support that they need. Whether it's community or a therapist or whatever, and it's not us, because that's not our responsibility.
Yeah, definitely.
Unless it is.
It depends on exactly what your qualifications and your commitment to your work looks like. But we're just ultimately Tantra and the instruction of Tantra and yoga, they're both essentially just functions for facilitating these awakenings and these liberations, and the residual, sort of the remnants that come along with it, that stuff that, of course, someone who works on a deeper level as a coach or counselor or somehow has support integrated into their work, like one-on-one sessions and stuff, that's where that comes in. But if you're in a yoga studio taking a Kundalini pranayama class and something comes up, and of course a yoga teacher is normally someone happy to chat with you a little bit, but the extent of their ability to actually work through the deeper stuff is usually limited. That's true. Yeah.
And the etymology of facilitate is to make easy. It's not to solve your problems.
I didn't know that. That makes sense though. Fácil in Spanish is easy. That makes complete sense. I love that. Thank you. I love etymology.
Cool.
One more question, and then I want to close this portion of our talk.
Okay.
Top 3 things, favorite things to do with men and women. And that can,
Wow.
I would like to take it as intimate as possible, that you'd like to share.
You know, it's, no, I love sex. Don't get me wrong. But one of the things I love almost as much is like creating something.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my love languages is like, it's like acts of service.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that I love to do are like home improvement or building something fun. And to be able to do that with the men and women I love is, to me, super sexy. It'll definitely get
and productive way of channeling your energy, right?
It would definitely get me in the mood. We'll just put it that way.
All
I
right.
tell you, there's nothing like a sense of accomplishment to get me turned on. So,
awesome.
you know, just in case you want to flirt with me, tell me about the awesome things you got done with your day. And I'd be
taking
like,
notes.
Seriously, I know it's like the weirdest thing, but I just
maybe
love,
it's the Virgo in
leaders.
you.
What?
Maybe it's the Virgo in you. You're like, oh my gosh,
Virgo?
you're so, yeah, like, wow, you're so productive and you're so accomplished.
My Virgo will get turned on if you just built something. And my Leo will get turned on if you were like totally in chaos, go with the flow, and you created something on the spot with no forethought. There you go.
Love it.
That's mine.
Well, that ties into your art, doesn't it? Which we'll be talking about next.
Yay!
But for now, I just want to say, yeah, I'm excited about that. And I just wanted to say, want us to say a quick goodbye to our Facebook friends who are watching. And of course, let them know that we'll see more. They'll be able to see more of this interview on YouTube and on the website tantramantrayantra.com as soon as I get it all put together. So thank you so much, Heather, for giving us a little look into your personal world. That was fun. And your history. And